The pitch from Acevedo.
Swung on the line, down the left field line for a base hit.
Fly ball, gap, right center field. And
Double him up at second.
Luke is going back to the 1-8 track. Get out the right, run and Buster Grandma. It is grand salami time.
will send Seattle to the American League Championship Series for the first time in 24 years.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Light the W podcast. A little bit of a late recording here on Monday, July 20th, as I was busy last night, but we are back. Welcome to episode 184 of the show, and we got a lot to talk about, all right? This episode, we're going to talk about the weekend. We're going to talk about this roster as we head closer and closer towards the trade deadline. We're going to talk about some trades the Mariners might be able to make in terms of getting the reliever and the bat that they need in the same trade. And then we're going to talk about 4 relievers from the Cincinatti Reds who the Mariners play early this week. Trade deadline is 2 weeks from today. It is rapidly approaching, but it's going to be interesting to see what the Mariners do and how soon they are able to do it. We saw them set the market last year when they traded for Josh Naylor while I was out looking at the Statue of Liberty in New York. Not going to be out at the Statue of Liberty this year. However, maybe I'm doing something a little different out in this Pacific Northwest. They always seem to like to make trades when I'm out and about doing stuff, right? Like, I'm always remembering where I am when I'm doing stuff. Josh Naylor trade. I am, like I said, out on a boat looking at the Statue of Liberty. They signed him while I'm at Disneyland about to watch a parade. Like, man, they love to do it at weird and wacky times. Maybe they'll do it while I'm at the ballpark one of these next couple days. I'll be there both tonight and tomorrow in T-Mobile Park. I'm excited to be there, actually. I'm feeling the juices. The World Cup's over. Mariners played better the past couple days. I've actually been able to watch a little bit of them. I'm just like, let's go. Let's go. It's go time. It's July 20th. It's time for this team to get their footing, figure out who they are, what they want to be, what their identity is. How do we win this division? As we sit here, 12:04 p.m. just after noon, this team is 50-50 after 100 games. This team is welcoming a Cincinnati Reds team that they should be able to win 2 out of 3 against. This team is a half game out of first place in the AL West, behind the Rangers, who have been playing better recently. This team is... what else? Is this team the best team in the American League? Is this team the best team in the American League West? Is this team a World Series contender? Is this team going to make changes at the deadline? Is this team able to win with Dan Wilson? Is this team deep enough to be able to win for 3 months straight? Is this team gonna be able to do things that this Mariners organization has never been able to do in 50 years? Right? One thing we do know about this team, though, is that they have a second baseman and a shortstop that are young as hell and talented as hell. Cole Young has been unbelievable. Colt Emerson's bat has gotten colder, but he made a huge play in the 10th inning of Saturday night's ball game that really helped and maybe even allowed the Mariners to be able to walk it off and to be able to do what they did and win Game 2. If they lose Saturday night, who knows what happened Sunday. But these 2 games, and this better play was kicked off by one swing off the bat of your second baseman, Cole Young. Should have been all-star, Cole Young. Those plays, that home run, that play in the field by Emerson, those have the potential to be momentum shifting, to be season changing, season altering, vibe changing plays for this team. It brings some better vibes into the clubhouse. It lets the team just take a breath in and take a deep breath out, which is sometimes all you need. And then Cole Young, another huge homer on Sunday. This guy has been fantastic. Fantastic. Been one of the best second basemen in baseball. Has probably been the most consistent player in the Mariners lineup this entire season. Dom Canzone has an argument there, but he's been mostly a platoon guy for most of the season. Those two guys, Cole Young and Colt Emerson, you could throw Dom Canzone in there even. Those three guys have changed this team a lot. And this is what we've been talking about for multiple years, and we're saying this team is just a few years away from having some young talent come up and really change what this team can look like. Like, ultimately, right, you look at this roster, and there's a couple obvious things that this team needs to start happening in order for them to do the things they want to do. But you look a month and a half ago, there was another thing added to that list alongside Cal Raleigh, alongside Josh Naylor, alongside Julio Rodriguez, alongside Brendan Donovan getting healthy. They also needed Andres Munoz to figure it out. And Andres Munoz seems to have figured it out. That did not sound right. But he seems to have figured it out. He's been unbelievable. He's been just blowing his fastball by guys. He's averaging over 100 miles an hour as of late. Has been throwing 102. Like, this guy has been unbelievable. The fastball's been setting up the slider, even the changeup here and there. And that is a huge deal that the Mariners have their closer doing closer things. Andres Munoz is doing Andres Munoz things, which is what they've been needing. This team relies on its pitching staff so much, and having your closer be the guy you expect him to be the guy you need him to be, is huge. Beginning of 2025, Andres Munoz was untouchable. A similar version of Andres Munoz is there right now. That changes the outlook for this entire team. It changes the vibes. It changes what they can do. It changes how they can win ball games. I believe this team can win a 1-0 ball game again because they have their closer there. It is huge. And look, they need bullpen help, bullpen arms at the deadline. There is no doubt about that. Matt Brash, Cooper Criswell, Carlos Vargas, we don't know when exactly they're going to be back. But when it looked like it was going to be right after the deadline, it's looking like it might not be till mid-August at the earliest for any one of those guys. The Mariners need help now. They need help soon. They need to start winning. And Andres Munoz, being the guy you need him to be at the back of the bullpen, can change what you need at the deadline. You don't need that solidified closer. But what you do need is an eighth inning guy, especially right-handed. What you do need is a guy in the seventh inning. Now, are you going to go acquire two relievers? I highly doubt it. But if you're going to go acquire one reliever, it needs to be a good reliever. And there aren't that many options out there. Right? And you look at the Mariners lineup, they need help there as well. Right? They need a guy that can just be a right-handed bat that can hit left-handed pitching. Maybe he's an everyday player. Maybe he's here for a few years. Maybe he's a rental. Okay? They need that, right? But where does that fit? Who's off the roster for that? Is it a guy that needs to be super good with his bat? Can he just be a guy that is a good defender and is athletic? Or is that another thing this Mariners team needs? I look at this deadline, and the priority is a 7th or 8th inning reliever, another Matt Brash, who's healthy. Would be huge. Now, is that guy on the market? Sure, but how many of them are on the market? Maybe just a couple. Then you need that bat, right? You need that everyday type of right-handed hitter. That'd be huge. And then can you get a guy that's a defensive-oriented, speedy guy that can change how you can win ball games? The best teams in baseball have those guys on the bench. You need a legit bench bat. You look at this roster right now, right? I did a process here of who's replaceable. Who could be replaced? Look, Luke Raley, Colt Emerson, potentially. Raley less so. Emerson's going to be here for a long time. Does he need to get sent down to work on his bat a little bit more? Potentially. So you could acquire something there. But I looked at Victor Robles. I look at Buddy Kennedy. I look at Mr. Wilson. Who the hell is Will Wilson? Those three guys, easily replaceable. Those three guys should be replaced. One of those guys will probably be replaced by Brendan Donovan. All right? That leaves two of those guys. Let's say Wilson's gone. All right? Leaves Buddy Kennedy. Leaves Victor Robles. Those two guys. How do you replace them? One of those comes through that deadline acquisition, probably, of a bat that can impact this team. But then maybe you make another one, more under radar sort of addition. This doesn't have to be an unbelievable player, but a guy that brings some new energy, some new life, some youth, full energy into this team. Maybe it's Michael Arroyo, but maybe you need a guy that's a defender. Maybe you need a guy that can run, maybe some stolen bases. That's the type of things that this team also needs. They're a little stagnant. They're a little stale, right? So we'll see if they add those things, right? But you think about what a lineup looks like when Brendan Donovan gets back and when they're healthy. It's Brendan Donovan, it's Julio, it's Naylor, it's Randy, it's Cal, it's Dom, it's Cole, it's Colt, it's JP. That's a really good lineup. A really good lineup. And that's why we believed in this team in the middle to end of March on opening day to be able to win this division, to be able to do the things that this team's never been able to do. This organization's never been able to do. This franchise has never been able to do. There's a reason for that, right? You look at that roster, the bench then consists of Luke Raley, Mitch Garver, and then who else? Who else? There are two moves to be able to be made on this roster, in my opinion, because Victor Robles doesn't really need to be here any longer. And obviously those two other guys don't really need to be here any longer. Okay? Moves can be made. And you can make a bigger move and you can make a fringer move with the potential to be a bigger move. And that can make sense. That can be good. That can be a positive thing for this team. Right? And the question you're going to ask yourself over and over again is this team going to do the things they want to do? Is this team going to make a move soon? Is this team going to move a starter? The biggest question of this deadline, maybe, is whether they're going to move one of the starting pitchers. And to me, I look at it, and if they're going to move one of those starting pitchers, that's not going to be a trade super soon. That's going to be a trade closer to August 3rd. That first weekend of August, circle that. 1st and 2nd of August, and obviously the 3rd as well, as the days that's when it makes sense for this team to move the starter, because you're going to get your offers in, you're going to get your potential trades in, you're going to be able to say, oh, we've got these trades to be able to do. Which one do we like best? Which one is the trade that builds our team up the best, that makes us the best possible team to make a run in 2026 and beyond? But they can make a move sooner as well that doesn't involve one of those guys. When you think about Luke Weaver, that's a move they could make sooner. The Mets are open for business. You go give them an offer that they like, they would do it. Las Montes, Luke Weaver, is that a trade you'd be willing to do? I think I would call that in instantly. Again, I'm down on Las Montes. Strikeout rate concerns me. But I think that's a trade you could do. Now, some people might not do that trade. Others would. Which maybe makes it a fair trade, right? It's impossible to know how different teams value different players. And when you look at the Baltimore Orioles as another team that the Mariners could potentially trade with, that's not a team that's aligned with the Mariners in how they view players and value over the past couple of years. It's been a while since the Mariners made a trade with the Orioles. That's not a team you expect them to be able to trade with, but they have fits for this roster. As we transition here, is there going to be the possibility for the Mariners to acquire a bat and reliever in a trade together? Got 5 options here that the Mariners potentially could look at for that possibility. We're going to mention a reliever or two that could work. Each one of those trades, we're going to mention a bat that could work. We're going to mention whatever team that is, obviously, as well. So let's start with those Orioles. This is a team that I don't really expect the Mariners to make a move with, but they fit the Mariners really well. Rico Garcia, Yenier Cano, both relievers, really fit this Mariners roster well and are maybe the best options on the entire market as relievers to be able to reasonably go get. Now, the bat, obviously, for that one is going to be Taylor Ward. Not a guy we've talked about on the show a lot, and I will tell you right now, I'm planning to talk about all 3 of those guys in a coming episode soon. But this might be the very best out of all the potential options if you're wanting to get those players together. Now, Taylor Ward's not a perfect fit. His power's been down, but it's been starting to improve. This is a guy that it feels like the Mariners have been loving for a while, but he's been on the Angels, and it hasn't been a team the Mariners can really trade with. Now, the Orioles, for different reasons, might not be a team that the Mariners really can trade with. But should they be able to agree on compensation, a Rico Garcia and Taylor Ward or a Yenier Cano and Taylor Ward trade option should be very much so on the table. Because you get that deal done a couple days before the deadline, and then you can continue to work on how can we improve the fringes of our roster. How can we improve the smaller bits of our roster? Now, does George Kirby for Yenier Cano and Taylor Ward make sense? Probably not. Probably not. But I think there's a trade to be had there. The Orioles are going to look for a major league starter. And Mariners have major league starters. Okay? There's a real possibility, I think, that the Orioles, who have loved the Mariners' young starting pitching for a while, and the Mariners are finally able to come to terms on a deal here. Now, I don't see it likely. I don't really think it's going to happen. But that's a team to keep in your mind. Because we know they like the Mariners starting pitching, as everybody does. And we know they have pieces that the Mariners are going to want and be interested in. Right? So that's the first option. Second option we talked about last week. Make sure you go listen to that episode if you haven't already. We talked about both the bats already, Casey Schmidt, Helio Ramos, and we talked about Keaton Winn as a potential reliever. Eric Miller's also a reliever that has been thrown into the mix by The Athletic earlier this morning. There was an Eric Miller and Casey Schmidt trade that was thrown out there for George Kirby that I don't know if I would necessarily do it. Schmidt scares me. I don't know if Schmidt can continue what he's done so far through the first half of the season. But if he can, that's a trade that makes a lot of sense. If you believe in that bat, that's a trade that makes a lot of sense. So Miller and Schmidt, Miller and Ramos, Winn and Schmidt, Winn and Ramos. That's another pairing that makes a lot of sense and that I think is probably the second best option on this list. Now, the next option is a reliever I've mentioned. It's from the Mets, Luke Weaver, of course. That makes a lot of sense for this team, and I think is a really good fit for this team. And might be the best reliever realistically on the market. If you can go get Luke Weaver, it's going to be great. Now, is Weaver and a bat really going to be a possibility? The Mets don't have a lot of bats that interest me a whole lot. But if Luis Robert gets healthy, starts to produce for a week here, he could make sense. Don't think it would happen. Don't think the Mariners would want Luis Robert. But a Luke Weaver-Luis Robert trade would be exciting in many senses. And I think Luke Weaver is going to be a name that's thrown out there a lot. It's already been thrown out there so far. And I think it's a player that the Mariners have really liked in the past and are going to really try and see if they can get him done. They're going to be in the market for the best relievers here at this deadline. I am sure of it. They were the finalists for Joan Duran last year. It's going to be just like that. I truly believe that. Even a guy like Luke Weaver, who has some money owed to him next year, he is good enough that I believe the Mariners would do it. All right, let's move down to San Diego. Obviously, the guy that's been talked about a lot is Mason Miller. But Morejon is another guy that I've talked about a little bit and would make a lot of sense. That's a lefty that can get both sides out at the plate. He's really, really, really good. Maybe the best left-handed reliever in baseball. One of the best for sure. Both those guys would make a lot of sense for the bullpen. Now, the bat, there's not really a bat in San Diego that you would love. But Miguel Andujar is a fringe type of addition could make sense. Ty France, could you reunite yourself with him? I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's likely, nor do I think they should. But it is a possibility. Right, so San Diego's another team that you could think about. You'd be like, yeah, maybe you could get both players in the same deal. Again, not a great fit, and there's not that many great fits in terms of getting both players in the same deal on the market. But I got one more option for you. The Cincinnati Reds, who are in town this week, have a couple bats that potentially could make sense. The obvious one is Spencer Steer, right-handed guy that can hit left-handed pitching, has had a really good year, can play in the outfield, can play in the infield, would make sense for this team. Has some control. But could JJ Bleday make sense? He's had a decent season. The problem is he's a left-handed hitter and an outfielder, and he's similar to what the Mariners already have in Dom Canzone and Luke Raley. So let's circle Steer there, all right? So Steer and what reliever? TJ Anton, guy that makes sense. Sam Moll, a guy that makes sense. Brock Burke, a guy that makes sense. And whether you like it or not, could Caleb Ferguson make sense? Reuniting yourself with him? That one doesn't seem so likely, but let's talk about those four guys. All right? Let's talk about all these Reds relievers, all four of them, as the Reds come to town tonight. Let's start with Brock Burke. This might be the best option of the bunch. At 29 years old, Burke is a rental reliever who has put up a 2.89 ERA so far this year in 46 2/3 innings. And lefties are hitting just 179, 289, 308 with just 5 extra base hits through the 90 batters that have faced Burke from the left side. He's been really good and at his best in mid and high leverage opportunities, though most of his innings have come in lower leverage situations. He hasn't been hit hard much at all, with a 20% strikeout rate that's slightly above average. It's a lot of weak flyouts, which should play in T-Mobile Park, and last year was elite at getting ground balls. Now, the concerns. It's a 4.36 FIP. The whip is over 1 at 1.35, not where you'd want it to be. Righties have been better against him than lefties, still not amazing, but better. It's an OPS between 700 and 750. The walk rate is at 13.5%, which is really high, and well, last year it was down closer to 7 or 8%. That 13.5% in of itself for the Mariners might turn them away from Burke. They really don't like guys that walk a lot of guys. However, you can't look at Brock Burke and not be interested. Even though he's mostly a lefty versus lefty matchup guy, he's been good in mid and high leverage situations. He's been dominant against lefties. And his overall numbers, when you look at ERA, have been good. Now, ERA is not the best number for relievers by any means. In my opinion, FIP and WHIP are much better. And his FIP and WHIP aren't all that interesting, but it's just half a season and could make a lot of sense, I think, for this Mariners team. He fits the ballpark. He fits the team for the most part. And him being a rental means that you're not going to have to trade a whole lot for him to those Cincinnati Reds. And I really think the Reds probably will trade him. So Brock Burke probably is my favorite of the bunch. However, the one that's been the best is TJ Anton. Now, he hasn't thrown a lot of innings so far this year. And over the past 2 seasons, threw just 7 2/3 innings. That's due to Tommy John surgeries in 2022 and 2024, which were his second and third Tommy John surgeries of his career. That's the concern, right? But this is a right-handed reliever that has produced this year at 32 years old and has a year and a half left of control. He has the track record when he was healthy in 2021 and 2020 in the shortened season, but didn't pitch in 2022 and barely pitched in 2023 and 2024. It's a guy you'd have to be careful with how much you're throwing him, right? But that ERA of just barely over 2 and a whip under 1 is really interesting. But you think about Jimmy Garcia a few years ago, guy that the Mariners acquired that had been dealing with some injury stuff in the past couple of years, and that even in that year, the Mariners then acquired him, and he got hurt, and he wasn't able to contribute for the Mariners at the deadline. So that injury history, really scary. But if you think TJ Anton can stay healthy, He's a great reliever that would be the 8th inning right-handed reliever you've been looking for. Another guy, lefty Sam Mohal, is a guy that's been discussed in off seasons of past because he was a really good reliever, really solid reliever in 2021, 2022, 2023, and even 2024. But he's now 34 years old, and with only a year and a half left of control, could make a lot of sense for the Reds to trade him. Okay. So he had a tough 2025 season, and 2026, although better than 2025, has still not been great. And with his fastball velocity being 2 miles an hour lower than just a couple years ago, is concerning. That has also come with an issue in results. All right. A really good first couple months for Sam Mohal, but he has since struggled. 2 bad months in a row and a tough start here to the second half means his numbers overall in the season aren't that great. But you look at his numbers away from Cincinnati. It's a 6.27 ERA at home for Cincinnati and a 2.86 on the road. And the biggest difference there is home runs per 9, which makes a lot of sense in that ballpark. Great American ballpark, one that gives up a lot of home runs. It's a smaller ballpark. It's an NL Central ballpark. It's one of the most home run friendly ballparks in baseball. Almost 1.5 home runs per 9 at home and less than 1 home run per 9 on the road. So that's the big difference. The rest of the numbers are fairly similar. And he seems like he would be a really good fit for the ballpark for Seattle. Right? And he could use a change of scenery. Now, he's a left-handed reliever that you don't love. Right? You want a right-handed reliever, especially when the lefty that you're acquiring is mostly a left versus left guy. But could a change of scenery here at 34 years old continue to unlock him a little bit? Can you unlock a little bit more velocity from him? But the combination of struggling in high leverage, being 34 years old now, and having that fastball velocity drop, again, 2 miles an hour over the past 2.5 seasons, is a real and legitimate concern. Because if you're acquiring a bullpen arm here at the deadline, it needs to be a guy that is going to contribute. It needs to be a guy that is going to change the outlook of this bullpen, that is going to be an impact arm. And I don't know if Sam Mohal is that. Now, if you're telling me you go acquire 2 relievers and Sam Mohal is the second one, I think this is a really interesting option. I think it's a really good option, actually. Especially because if you acquire 2 relievers, now I'm not saying they're going to, nor do I necessarily think they need to, but I would have a lot of fun with that. I think a lefty would make a lot of sense, a guy that can be just a left versus left guy and be your third best lefty in the pen. And Sam Mohal fits that. Brock Burke fits that. He'd be the second or third best. Kind of fit in between. Right? But another guy that potentially could make sense that people aren't going to like is Caleb Ferguson. All right, this is a rental. We know him. We didn't love him. But he's had another good first half. It's a 3.20 ERA. It's a 3.56 FIP. It's a 1.42 WHIP. Not amazing, not incredible, but as a third best lefty in the pen, could make sense. Strikeout rate is up from last year, but he's dealt with an oblique injury through parts of this year, and has only thrown 19 2/3 innings. Again, is he a perfect fit? No. The injury history doesn't make him all that intriguing also. But at the very least, reacquiring Caleb Ferguson would be freaking hilarious. And I'm in for that. I'm always in for that. All right. So look, I think that the Mariners could make a trade with the Reds and go get one of their relievers, and it could be really interesting and it could make a lot of sense. But there aren't that many that make sense as the best reliever you go and acquire, if any. Now, Brock Burke might make sense, and I think he's the best option of the bunch. It could be a guy the Mariners are really interested in and could get done early. If you're telling me you bring in Brock Burke and Luke Weaver to this bullpen, I think this is a dominant, filthy, ridiculously good bullpen. which I think is something the Mariners should be interested in. And I think you should try and go get a reliever earlier so that you don't feel pressured into going and getting that top arm for a price that makes you feel really, really uncomfortable. So I think Brock Burke's a name to circle. It's a name to think about. It's a name to go look at and see if you'd be interested yourself. Because I think Brock Burke is the best option of the bunch. And if you go and acquire Brock Burke, Spencer Steer, and Luke Weaver at this deadline, I will give you a B+, an A-, and I will be jolly. All right. Now, Mariners, 2 good wins in a row. They're playing better baseball. Has the Cole Young homer turned it around? We sure hope so. Let's get another series win, and it starts tonight on Monday. You need a win tonight because you're facing Chase Burns tomorrow. And you have Luis Castillo on the mound. So let's not talk about it. It's going to be scary. But let's go win tonight. George Kirby on the mound. How about a good start, Jorginho? Come out of the second half firing. Let's have a good half season of you, George. Thank you for listening to episode 184 of the show. Till Wednesday. Go M's. Peace.